Welcome to Tabo Eminent Channel. National Beer Day is observed annually in the United States on April 7 to commemorate the enactment of the Cullen-Harrison Act in 1933. This legislation, signed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt on March 22, 1933, and effective from April 7, 1933, legalized the sale of beer with an alcohol content of up to 3.2% by weight, marking a pivotal step toward ending prohibition. The Cullen-Harrison Act allowed states to regulate the sale of low-alcohol beverages within their jurisdictions. Upon its implementation, numerous Americans celebrated by purchasing beer legally for the first time in over a decade. This act set the stage for the full repeal of prohibition later that year with the ratification of the 21st Amendment on December 5, 1933. In recognition of this historic event, April 7 has been unofficially celebrated as National Beer Day in the U.S. The day serves as an opportunity for beer enthusiasts to enjoy and appreciate the diverse beer culture that has flourished since the end of Prohibition. Thanks for watching. Request you to subscribe the channel. While National Beer Day is specific to the United States, other countries have their own beer-related celebrations. For instance, the United Kingdom observes Beer Day Britain annually on June 15. Additionally, International Beer Day is celebrated globally on the first Friday of August each year, aiming to unite the world in appreciation of beer and those involved in its production and service. For those interested in learning more about the history and significance of National Beer Day, the following video provides an informative overview. What is National Beer Day? National Beer Day is celebrated each year on April 7 in the United States. It marks a major turning point in American history, the beginning of the end of Prohibition, a 13-year period from 1920 to 1933 when the sale, production, and transportation of alcoholic beverages were banned across the U.S. Historical backdrop. What happened on April 7, 1933? On this day in 1933, the Cullen-Harrison Act went into effect. This act, signed into law by President Franklin D. Roosevelt on March 22 of the same year, legalized the sale of beer with up to 3.2% alcohol by weight, about 4% by volume. While it didn't fully repeal Prohibition, it allowed Americans to legally enjoy beer again after years of dry laws. The first beer run in 13 years. The very next day, April 7, 1933, Americans lined up outside breweries and taverns to buy legal beer for the first time since Prohibition began in 1920. Over 1.5 million barrels of beer were consumed within 24 hours. It was a day of celebration, hope, and camaraderie. Cities like St. Louis, Milwaukee, and Chicago held massive street parties, with beer wagons parading through the streets. Breweries like Anheuser-Busch even sent a team of Clydesdales to deliver a case of Budweiser to the White House. How it became an official celebration. While the date was historically significant, National Beer Day wasn't officially recognized until much later. It gained popularity in the early 2000s thanks to beer enthusiasts and online communities. In 2009, a Virginia man named Justin Smith and his friend Mike Connolly started a Facebook group advocating for April 7 to be National Beer Day. The movement caught on, and today it's widely celebrated in bars, breweries, and homes across the country. On April 7, 1933, after 13 long years of prohibition, Americans finally had a reason to raise a glass again, legally. This momentous day marked the implementation of the Cullen-Harrison Act, a piece of legislation signed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt that allowed the sale of beer with an alcohol content of up to 3.2% by weight. Though it wasn't a full repeal of Prohibition, it was the first crack in its foundation, and it gave the public a much-needed taste of freedom. Roosevelt himself is famously quoted as saying, "I think this would be a good time for a beer," upon signing the bill, words that echoed the national mood. Across the country, people celebrated as breweries fired up their kettles and beer wagons rolled through city streets for the first time in over a decade. In St. Louis, home of Anheuser-Busch, massive crowds gathered as beer was delivered with great fanfare, including a ceremonial case of Budweiser sent directly to the White House by Clydesdale-drawn carriage. The joy was palpable. More than 1.5 million barrels of beer were consumed within 24 hours, a clear sign of how deeply the ban had affected everyday life. Though the full repeal of prohibition would come later that year with the 21st Amendment, April 7th became a symbolic day of rebirth for American brewing and beer culture. It wasn't until 2009 that National Beer Day gained momentum as a recognized celebration, thanks to a Virginia man named Justin Smith who created a Facebook group to commemorate the occasion. Since then, the holiday has grown in popularity, inspiring countless beer lovers to honor the history, craftsmanship, and community that beer represents. Whether in a bustling bar or a quiet backyard, people now toast each April 7th not just to beer itself, but to a time when America reclaimed a little joy in a bottle. The roots of National Beer Day are not just about legislation and legal drinking, they're also about culture, resilience, and a nation's desire to reconnect with its past pleasures. During the Prohibition era from 1920 to 1933, breweries shut down, speakeasies flourished in secrecy, and an entire generation grew up without the open joy of sharing a drink in public. Beer, once a staple of social life, became a symbol of rebellion, quietly brewed in basements or smuggled across borders. When the Cullen-Harrison Act took effect, it wasn't just the beer flowing again, it was laughter, music, and life returning to bars, restaurants, and homes. For many families, brewing had been a generational tradition, passed down before being paused by the dry laws. April 7th became more than a date on the calendar, it was a reunion with tradition. Over time, beer re-established itself as part of the American identity, from backyard barbecues to ball games, and from working-class pubs to upscale craft taprooms. The resurgence of the craft beer movement in the late 20th and early 21st centuries only deepened this connection, giving rise to thousands of local breweries, each with its own story, flavors, and loyal community. Today, National Beer Day is more than just a toast to history, it's a celebration of the creativity, craftsmanship, and camaraderie that a simple pint can inspire. As National Beer Day has grown in recognition, it has become not only a nod to a historical milestone but also a celebration of the small, everyday moments that beer helps bring to life. In the decades following the end of Prohibition, beer evolved from a utilitarian refreshment to a symbol of community, storytelling, and craft. For many, it's the drink shared at weddings, tailgate parties, reunions, and quiet nights on the porch. Each bottle or pint carries with it a sense of place, whether it's the crisp lager from a century-old Midwest brewery or a hoppy IPA born from a garage in Oregon. The stories behind these brews are often just as rich. Tales of immigrant families building breweries from scratch, of women reclaiming their historic role as brewers, of local communities rallying to keep their hometown brewery alive. On National Beer Day, beer enthusiasts and casual drinkers alike take a moment to honor those stories, often gathering at taprooms or sharing their favorite brews online with friends across the country. It's a modern holiday rooted in gratitude, for freedom, for flavor, and for the ability to raise a glass without fear or secrecy. In a world that moves fast, beer offers a pause, a chance to clink glasses, share laughs, and remember that even something as simple as a cold drink can carry decades of history and heart.